Okay, it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. We'll probably have a few late stragglers, but thank you everyone for joining. This is the monthly IPA tutorial. I'm going to go over 2 items today, and then I'll open it up for question and answer. Also, just a fair warning, this meeting is being recorded for those who can't make it. And also for the dual purpose of being able to possibly slice up what I'm about to show you as a tutorial video for other people. So the 2 things I'm going to go over today, I'm going to go over the teaching call. We have one enhancement to show to it, but it's also just a very popular feature, so I want to make sure that everyone understands how it works. I also realize that it's teaching call season for some of you. And then by popular demand, I'm going to go over the budget module and talk about how it works, what it currently does, as well as what we're working on next for the budget module. And then again, we'll end with a Q&A session. So if you can, try to hold your questions until the end. So starting with the teaching call is available by clicking on instructors and then going to teaching calls. Like most of IPA, it's really important to make sure you're in the right academic year and you're in the right work group for those of you who have multiple work groups. And you can see anyone who's already been called by looking at these tables, and it's grouped by the instructor type, but I'm going to go ahead and start a new call by clicking on Call Instructors. And then I have a couple of options here. I have the instructors I want to call. I can either turn them on or off individually, adding them to the call, or I can go ahead and say add all of my AIs, add all of my pre-6s. In this case, I'm going to call Sadaf. We can set a due date. This is a soft due date, so they will be warned that the due date is coming up if you decide to email. However, they can always log in after the fact. And then you can decide what terms you want as well. If you do a rolling teaching call where perhaps you only ask about the next quarter, in this case, winter quarter, you could go ahead and click this and just do winter, and then 3 months from now, you could go ahead and switch it to just say spring, or you could go ahead and, if you do your whole year at once, select them all. Ask for unavailabilities. This is if you want to collect that information. Some departments like to turn this off because they don't like to imply that the instructors have a choice in the matter. And then in other departments, the instructors very much do have a choice in the matter. So that just helps you configure your teaching call appropriately. And then send email, whether you want IPA to send the email, telling them that they have a teaching call. If you uncheck this box, the teaching call still begins, and they can just go directly to ipa.ucdavis.edu. It's our understanding that most people just keep this box checked, and then you can edit the email too. In this case, I'm not going to click send email because this is just a demo. So when I hit start, you'll see after a moment something on this page just changed. You'll see down here under the generic instructor title, Sadaf has been added. And you'll see it says, is there a checkbox under submitted? No, of course not. Was Sadaf contacted yet? No, but if we reload this page in a minute, that'll be the case. Could everyone go ahead and mute their audio? I'm getting a little bit of feedback. So just be sure that your audio is muted. Okay, sorry about that. I'll be sure to unmute folks when we're done. So, and then of course the due date, if we set a due date, so Sadaf has that due date. Now I'm going to switch hats and we're going to pretend to be Sadaf so that you can see what Sadaf sees, see what your instructors see essentially. I'm going to do that. I clicked on this little gear icon, which takes us to what we call our work group page. This is where you can edit people, their roles. You can edit your tags. You can edit any of your custom locations that you may offer classes in. In this case, you'll see Sadaf is here in the instructor list under the generic instructor title. This is also where I would switch what the title is supposed to be if I wanted to be more granular about it. But I'm going to click this impersonate button. I don't know if we've talked about this too often, but this impersonate button is pretty useful. It lets you impersonate an individual so that you can see what they see. This feature is only available to people who have the staff role. It's not available to your faculty or to your graduate students, for the reason that once you impersonate, you really can modify data. So we want to make sure that we're careful with who we give out access to. But once I impersonate Sadaf, IPA changes a lot. You'll see I don't really have a lot of options here on the navigation on the left. We're looking at the instructor, what we call the instructor summary page. You'll see in this case, there's also another summary page for the support staff. This is just because in my demo data, Sadaf is also a graduate student, but that's not a typical case. But you'll see right here at the top, this is the page that the faculty will see when they log into IPA. Right at the top, it says teaching call, view teaching call form. There's even this little icon letting them know to draw their attention to this. There's something they need to do. So I'll go ahead and click view teaching call form. And this is the teaching call form. This is what the faculty will see when they log in. And if they get that email for the teaching call instead, the email has a link that goes directly to this page. And the way this page works is relatively simple. We have the year and the group at the top, of course. We have this empty table of teaching preferences. We have this grid of unavailabilities because I decided to keep that option on. We have a comments area, and then we just have this area on the side, which is for review, just to make sure that that happened. And then in this case, because I am requesting information about multiple terms, they can go ahead and select which term we're talking about. So I'm just going to keep it on the fall quarter term. I'll click Add Preference. And this is where we've changed a few things. You'll see we now sort this list to the non-course options. And then the course options themselves are now grouped by subject code. And then we have this feature here at the bottom called Suggest a Course. This actually used to be in IPA about a year ago, but we removed it for user confusion. And we've since added it back in. So I'm going to go ahead and indicate a few things. I'm going to go ahead and indicate that I have a preference for, say, ECS 30, and then I'm going to go ahead and say Suggest a Course, because perhaps there's a 99 that I'd like to teach. So when I click Suggest a Course, you'll see this menu kind of pops up where it says Search Courses. So I'll just start typing ECS. Let's do, I guess it would be 099. And there it is, special study, and I click it, and now it's on the list. So this is brand new. This is a mechanism for the faculty to indicate that they would like to teach a course that isn't already on the courses page. The rest of this form is pretty straightforward. I don't want to waste too much of your time with it, but if they want to indicate unavailabilities, they can just kind of click and drag and block out time here. They can also leave a comment for anything that's not captured by this form. And then when they're done, they can hit submit. And there we go. You'll see it even kind of gets bumped down because now that they've handled it, there's no icon here indicating that they need to do anything. Yes, they've submitted their preferences. So if your faculty ever want to know, did I fill that out? They can just log in. They'll see this page. They'll see that they submitted. They can always click View Teaching Call Form or follow the link in the email to get back to this, and they can modify this data so long as you haven't confirmed anything. I'm going to unimpersonate Sadaf now and sort of put my staff hat back on. You can do that by just clicking this Stop Impersonating button that appears over here. This kind of interface tells me, here's who I really am in case I ever forget, and then here is who I am impersonating. So I'll just click Stop Impersonating, and I get all my options again. And the other half of the teaching call is in the what we call the Assign Instructors page. I just want to show you really quick here. If I go to Teaching Calls, now we can see under Sadaf, she was contacted, I guess is that today's date, and then submitted indeed, when is it due? Next contact is blank because the system has no intention of emailing her because she's finished her job. Had she not logged in a day or two, you might see, the next contact is filled in. But getting to the Assign Instructors page, this is the other half of the process. This is now that we have their preferences, what do we do with it? We can view this data by course or by instructor. In this case, I'm going to view it by instructor. I'm going to go down to Sadaf. We can see preferences have been submitted. And if I click under Assign for fall quarter, we'll see the courses that the individual was interested in, and they're even displayed in the order that they're interested in. So I can go ahead and say, yes, ECS 30 will be taught. And then maybe this is it. Maybe it's just this one course. And so if I'm done with this instructor, I can even click this button to toggle that I'm done with this individual just to remind me. And then I can go up to the filters and I can even say hide completed to hide the people that I've completed. And in this case, I completed everybody else. So that's just a quick look at how the teaching call works. Again, I wanted to show you because it's teaching call season for some of you. And in case there's any confusion, hopefully that'll clear some of it up. I do want to note, I should have noted at the beginning of this, it's important that you fill in your courses first. We've had a few instances where people send out a teaching call and this courses table is blank. If you do that, when your faculty are filling out their form, they will have those non-course options like the buyouts and the sabbaticals. They can suggest a course, but of course that's it. They won't know what you're offering. So your usual courses won't come up, which is usually a bad experience. So just be sure to fill out your courses table first. I'm going to move on and discuss the budget module. And then just a reminder, after that, we'll do the Q&A session. And all of this, also fair warning, is being recorded. Not that anyone has any unusual Q&A, but I always like to give that warning. So the budget module is something that we're actively working on. We've been working on it for a long time. The purpose of it is to put costs to all of this other IPA data. Now that you've captured what courses you're offering, now that you've captured what sections you're offering, who's teaching it, who's on sabbatical and needs a replacement instructor, all of this data, how many TAs, all of that has costs associated with it. And the budget module is where we actually do that work. So I got to this by clicking on budget. I'm going to go ahead and hide the menu. This little button up here that says toggle sidebar lets us collapse this, and you can just kind of get a nicer view. Again, it's important, what year am I in? What work group am I in? In this case, there's also this concept here of the scenario. A scenario, if you see, I can go ahead and click and I can swap between them. A scenario is synonymous with a file on your computer. So if you have an Excel file and you copy paste it and you generate a second one, you can then modify that second file and the first file stays unmodified, right? This is a pretty basic concept. That's what the scenarios are. They're basically different files that you can use. So if you want to run multiple scenarios, maybe you want to see what would happen if we don't offer this course. Maybe you want to see what would happen if we do offer a course. You can use scenarios for that. I've also seen people use scenarios. This is kind of an interesting use case. They'll create a new budget scenario by clicking on this button. They'll say create from schedule data. You can see when you create a scenario, you can either clone an existing scenario or you can clone from your schedule data, which means clone from what IPA currently has in all of those other pages. And they'll make a scenario, but they'll name it something like the current date. And then they won't touch it ever. And then they'll just keep modifying their original default scenario. And then this way they effectively are snapshotting, you know, what did my schedule look like? What were my costs as of this date? Some of the dean's offices like to know this, some of them don't. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not going to do that in this case. But I wanted you to know that there are budget scenarios. If you're not going to use that feature, don't worry about it. You're automatically put into a scenario called default scenario and it won't switch on you. So feel free to ignore it as well. This first tab is the summary tab. It just shows us a summary of what's in all of the other pages, shows us how our numbers add up. So fall, winter, spring. Of course, you could turn on other terms if you wanted to. But we'll take our TA count multiplied by the TA cost, reader count. You can see I have no readers, and we get our support cost subtotal. And then here's our replacement instructor subtotals. Please ignore the fact that we have some fake numbers. Pre-6 lecturers are paid more than $4 a quarter, of course. And then we add up these subtotals to get our total teaching costs. We also balance that against our funds, which are our cash inflows, right, versus our cash outflows. And we can see that we're currently running 21,000 short. Also, we just have some extra information here that people have requested. You know, what do the student credit hours look like? How do our offerings currently add up? This information here at the bottom is also available in one of the reports that you can get to in the navigation. It's at the very bottom of the navigation on the left. Moving on, schedule costs. This is the main sort of bread and butter of the budget module. This is where we can go in and see what things cost. This following bit is important. The budget module does not automatically track the rest of IPA for a very good reason. We don't want, say, a grad coordinator changing the number of TAs to change what a budget coordinator sees in their budget. Maybe the budget coordinator thought on Friday everything was balanced, and if IPA, this budget module, automatically tracked the changes in the rest of IPA, then if someone adds a TA, deletes a section, changes, grants a buyout, something like that, the numbers will change, and maybe that change needs to be authorized. So what we decided to do is the budget module, nothing changes in here. Nothing tracks the rest of IPA until someone goes in here and actually says, yes, I would like a change to occur. And I'll show you how you can do that. We make it fairly easy currently to go ahead and say, no, I actually do want to update this with the rest of IPA. And we're going to make that even easier with some enhancements that we're working on. But it's just very important to know that this budget module does not automatically change based on the rest of IPA. So where does it even get this data to begin with? It takes a snapshot of the data at the time the scenario was created. And so if you don't even use scenarios, then we're talking about the default scenario, which is just created the first time you load the page. So I'll show you the data drift, but I just wanted to mention that. And in fact, we can see the data drift here. ECS 10 Intro to Programming, this little icon here, this refresh icon here, this indicates something is different. The budget has 369 because that's probably what it had when we started this budget. But in the rest of IPA, it's become 279. So we have this little button here. Do I want to update? In this case, there's no consequence, so we'll just go ahead and update it. The same applies if I make a change here. If in my budget I say, you know what, ECS 10 needs 2 TAs, and I make that change, you'll see it changes here, the TA cost suddenly changes, the total course cost has changed, but this did not set 2 TAs in the TA module, in that separate module that maybe your grad coordinator has received training on. And this is basically, again, so people don't step on each other. We don't want the grad coordinator's data, we don't want someone to do the equivalent of sneaking into their cubicle and changing their data when no one is there. So instead, the budget individual can always see where what we call the data drift is occurring. And in that case, we change this from a 1 to a 2. So here IPA is telling us, do I want to fix it? Sure, I'll go ahead and revert it. In the case that, I'll set this to a 2, and in the case that that the 2 is the correct number, when the grad coordinator goes into the TA section and changes the number of TAs to 2, this will automatically go away. So you only see these buttons if in this very moment something differs. I'm sure that's clear as mud, but we can always keep talking about it. Here's another one too. Let's see. Oh, that's not one of them. Excuse me. But we can see, here update schedule TA count from 5 to none. Change the enrollment, so on and so forth. Moving on to the funds page. This is the cash inflows. This also has a budget drift component to it. You can see here, this is just a list of funds, here's someone's buyout funds, class canceled funds, TA range adjustment funds. And I can just arbitrarily add these by clicking this plus button and filling this out. But there's also this suggested area. And if I go and click on this, you'll see it says buyout lecturer replacement funds, Lloyd Wheeler buyout funds. This comes from the fact that on the instructor assignments page, someone granted a buyout to an individual. Well, a buyout may or may not have budgetary consequences. And so what this suggested tab is telling us is, do we want to add that to the budget? And so in this case, I'll go ahead and say, yes, indeed, I need to track the budgetary consequences of that buyout. Now that I've accepted it, the table is blank. There's no number here. And Lloyd's buyout lecturer replacement funds appear here. It has no cost, but I'll go in here, and I'll set some kind of cost for it. And there we go. Moving on, the instructor list is a relatively straightforward tab. It lets us set the cost of instructors. Here's where that $13 comes from. I know Lloyd's on the line, so he's going to be very happy when I'm going to change his salary from $13 to $1,300. I'm getting a thumbs up. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and stick with 4. Just, I'll just take one for the team there. This is where instructor salaries are set. You'll see some of these salaries are black, some are blank, and some are gray. What's going on there? Blank means we have absolutely no information at all. So, for Siddharth, we don't know what the cost is. In the case of Gerald, though, it's $2,300 because it's coming from what we call a category cost. So here in the category costs, these are the costs of things like TAs, readers, AIs, pre-6 lecturers, and we can set their costs here. And so the way IPA determines how much a course costs, if I go back to the schedule cost page, it will take the cost from this instructor cost field. So if I was to go in here and say, this is what the instructor costs, you'll see this number just updated. That's simple. That's the instructor cost. And then, of course, it's adding in the support cost. If this was left blank, however, you'll see it fills in 4. And where does it get that from? And it has that gray. That gray is kind of our visual indicator that it's being inferred from somewhere else. If I hover over this, you'll see it says that that's the cost of the instructor. Well, where does that come from? Go into the instructor list, find the instructor, and you'll see in this case, it's because that's what the cost was set for that instructor. And then again, if I clear out even this box, you'll see there's a gray cost, and it says, well, that's the cost of a pre-6 lecturer. So that's another important piece of knowledge for anyone who's using the budget module. The way the costs are determined for instructor is, first, is there a cost directly in this table? If so, that's the answer. That's the cost. If there's not, we take a look at who is assigned, and we go into the instructor list, and we see, does that person have a cost? If they do, great, that's the cost. If not, we take a look at their type, and then we go into the category costs, and we see if that type has a cost. And then, of course, if there's nothing else we can do, we default it to blank. One last item on the budget module before I open it up to Q&A is this course list. This course list is a relatively recent addition, and the purpose of it is to handle the fact that not only do TAs drift, right, because the budget module, again, does not update without a person going in there and being explicit about it. Yes, I want to change the budget. So the other problem with that is sometimes entire courses disappear. Or conversely, in the same sense that I can change the number of TAs in a budget from, say, 2 to 5, what if I want to add a whole course to the budget that's not in the rest of IPA? Well, I can do that here under course list. If I wanted to add a course to the budget that's not going to show up in the rest of IPA, if that's a scenario you find yourself in, you can click this add button, go ahead and fill this out. Or you can take a look at here, and what we see here, it says course list, fall quarter, here is ECS 10. We can go ahead and click remove course if we want to go ahead and remove this course from the budget. And so now, let's see, I'll remove, that's ECS 10A. So if I go back to schedule costs, you'll see ECS 10A no longer exists here. I've effectively removed it from the budget. But you'll see that remove turned into an add course. And I can go ahead and just add it right back. The reason that add course is there, and I'll just toggle this again. Yes, I want to remove. The reason this add course is here is because it is in the rest of IPA. If I was to go to the courses module, this is ECS 10A for fall quarter. There it is, ECS 10A for fall quarter. And that's where it's getting that from. So if I was to do something, let's see here, let's remove the C section. If I was to remove that and then go into our budget and into the course list, you'll see here, ECS 10, the C sequence suddenly has this little warning on it, and it says this course is budgeted in the scenario, but it's not scheduled, right? So now it only exists in the budget, not the rest of IPA. Do I want to remove it? Indeed, I do. And you'll see in this case, now it just is completely gone. There's not even an add course option because it's disappeared from everywhere, which is what we would hope would happen. And of course, going back to the summary, all of this is reflected in the summary. So that is all I wanted to show you. I wanted to go over the teaching call because it's teaching call season, and also show you the addition that we made, that suggest a course feature. I also wanted to go over the budget scenario or the budget module, because I know that a lot of individuals are starting to look into the budget module very seriously. And now, with the time remaining, I open it up to any questions and answers. Well, questions. I mean, if you have an answer, that's great. That we may have about anything. It doesn't have to be about these two modules. And I guess I'll unmute everyone. I'm not sure how. I have to admit to being not a Zoom expert. So if there aren't any questions, if something pops into your head later, IPA help at ucdavis.edu is the recommended email address. That goes straight to my team. I see that. Lloyd sees that. We have another new programmer I don't think most of you have met named Gerald. He sees that too. And we'll respond as quickly as possible. This is going to go up on ipa.ucdavis.edu in this video of this recording will show up in this blog section. I'm sure most of you are looking for a very exciting new blog to read, and I highly recommend not reading the IPA blog because it's only for announcements like this. But if any of your colleagues, missed this, you can tell them to go here and click on blog to see this.
Christopher, I have a question.
Sure.
It's Michelle Louderman in computer science. On the teaching call section, when the instructor is putting in their teaching preferences, can they duplicate either their course preference or their availability, unavailability from quarter to quarter? So, like if they want to teach ECS 10, they wouldn't mind teaching it fall, winter, or spring. Is there a way to copy from one quarter to the other, and the same with their availability or unavailability?
You mean within the same academic year or across academic years?
Same academic year, just different quarter.
There is not currently, but that's a feature that we've captured previously.
Okay.
And it's just a question of determining demand for that versus demand for other things. But that's a good idea. The other one, there have been a couple others that have come up just to let everyone know what we're thinking about when we get around to the teaching call again. Is the ability to roll over across academic years, of course, or even if they don't roll over, maybe they want to see what did I teach last year while they're making their decisions for their preferences. And then finally, the idea that this comments form down here should maybe be on a per course basis. So we could leave this form-based comment section in here, but then they could maybe go in here and there'll be a little pencil icon or something, and they can leave a per course comment. Those are some of the things that we're kind of kicking around to make this page better. But I'll go ahead and just put another kind of vote for the ability to duplicate data across terms.
And another question in this same area, you mentioned when we actually take a look at the teaching call, where we're actually we're mapping the instructor to the course. So this would be on the administrative side. And when you're looking at by instructor, and then you look at in the assign box, it will give you their preferences in order. Yes. So I see that these do not have a number in parentheses. Yes. As it did earlier even in November, because we've already started our teaching call. Did that number go away?
It did. It went away on accident. Okay. I have, Gerald is actually working on this form right now, in particular the ability to click and type, so you can kind of do type aheads, which is a little more useful on the by course page, where you can click here and maybe you want to just start typing, right, an individual's name. But I'll make a note that the numbers have gone missing and ensure that they get restored. That should only take a few days.
Okay, because when we had done our process, the numbers were there, but they did not correlate to their preferences in order. Okay.
Was it I guess it was you who reported that bug, right, where
Yeah.
they were out of order. So I believe, let me double check, but I believe that bug has been fixed, and that might be why the numbers disappeared. That may have kind of happened at accident at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just make like a suggestion for aesthetics as far as when you're looking at this particular page in front of us?
Please.
You say you see Lloyd Wheeler and all the various, instructor names, and they're more gray. They don't really stand out when you've got a long list of instructors.
Do you mind if I look at your data?
No, that's fine.
Because I think it'll probably illustrate it. So we're doing by instructor.
Yes.
And
so you can see, because everything is the same color, the name, the add note, the check mark boxes, all of that is all similar colors. And so the names don't necessarily stand out.
The instructor names?
Yeah, it would be nice if maybe they were black instead of that gray or something.
Okay, that's a good idea. Let me just capture that really quickly. And I'm guessing the problem exists on the by course page as well. Yeah, I think they could both be more prominent.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a good idea. I also have from Brad Wolf asking, does the preference ordering bug also apply to the preference call for TAs and readers? I don't believe so. They should be two separate pieces of code. I'm going to ask Lloyd here really quick if he, and Lloyd, you don't necessarily, I mean, you can do your microphone or not, but do you recall if there was ever a bug with the preference ordering in the support staff page?
At the moment, it looks like it's okay.
All right, Lloyd thinks it's okay at the moment, but Brad, if you do see that, let us know. My guess would be no, because I believe that code has been duplicated. Okay, and Brad says he'll know by next week, which must mean that he's about to have a lot of fun with the support staff assignments page. All right, so thank you, Brad. Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming to the monthly IPA tutorial. This video will be up later today again, so you can tell your colleagues, and IPA help at ucdavis.edu is a great place to get support. If you ever email me directly, there is the chance that I'm out, so I recommend IPA help at UC Davis just so the rest of the team sees it. And also, I believe, my guess is almost all of you are on the IPA announce at UC Davis mailing list, but if not, subscribe to it. Or email me and I can subscribe you to it, because we use that to let you know what we're working on next. So we have some goals for before the holiday break that have to do with actually making some of these things nicer, like the type ahead drop-down search on the instructor assignments page, and sort of a smattering of other ideas. And that's, I encourage people to at least look at that. There's only one email a month or so. And if you get that email and you see something on there and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting for a feature, and it's still not on there, please reach out. We appreciate the squeaky wheels. So thank you, though, for attending, and I hope it was helpful.